Welcome to the Album Anniversary Podcast. The show I'm recording right now is for the week of March 18th through March 24th, and I'll talk more later about why I might remove that line from the script. I'm your host, Caleb, or Caleb the Spy on Twitter and Instagram. Every day on those social media sites, I post about what I call album anniversaries, and look, it's just the anniversary of the album's release date. And if I don't know the release date, I just kind of pick a date on my calendar. I'll talk about that more too for next week. A couple years ago, I created a calendar and documented the release dates of some of my favorite albums. On that day, I would just use that day to celebrate the album. I'd either post about it online or I'd take the opportunity to listen to it. But in the last year, the list of albums has grown significantly, and now I have every album I own tracked on my calendar, as well as a multitude of albums from others have suggested. But with so many albums and a limited number of characters, I don't always have a chance to say everything I want to about an album on social media. So I started this podcast because, I'm a huge music fan, and I wanted to be able to talk more about some of these albums and some of the posts that come up throughout the week. I'm no musician. I have a love for ska and punk and alt rock from the 90s. I'm also I was also in the 90s super into the Christian music scene. I also have just a fascination with historically important albums or musical events. Occasionally we talk about some news or other things going on, or just other music that I'm checking out, or just musical things that happened during the week. I'm mostly here though to talk about those albums that were celebrated during the week. Let's start with some news this week. This is the time last year where I really started going hard on album releases. Did I mention that last week? I don't know if I did. Nope, I didn't. So I did put that on my calendar. There's kind of a day that I marked. Yeah, this is the day I started doing it and really, really ramping up the schedule, ramping up the calendar. So I think that's, worth noting. That was sometime towards the end of March, and I think it really relates to the CCM tournament, and there's just no way around it. Other news, the Decemberists mentioned that they are going to be releasing a new album. I'm excited about that. I think sometime in June, maybe May. I don't know. It's coming out. They also released a 20-minute song as the first single, or the second single. I guess they've already released one. So that's fun. I love the Decemberists. Hope to, I'm excited to check that album out. Let's talk about CCM Twitter tournament, because that's been a topic of conversation the last couple weeks. The 70s and 80s and 90s got done this week. Thanks to Eric for running this thing. Can't say how much I appreciate that he puts all the work into this. I'm not going to lie, the tournament without a band like last year upsetting people, the tournament has been fairly straightforward. And to that point, I have 7 of the 8 of the Great 8 on that side. Is that what they call it? Elite 8 on that side. Amy Grant, Keith Green, Rich Mullins, Petra. I almost said Pantera. That would be an odd entry into the tournament. Sixpence None the Richer, Jars of Clay, DC Talk, and Stephen Curtis Chapman. The only one that I got wrong is I believed too much in the PFR hype. I somehow had them beating Stephen Curtis Chapman, which I will admit was really foolish looking back. I do get a lot of chatter from PFR, and maybe it's just recently with the show and all those things going on. But Stephen Curtis Chapman, when I post about him, even though I'm not a huge fan, gets a lot of engagement. So I should have seen that coming. But so far, so good. I've really nailed it. I had Sixpence beating MXPX. That's not what I would want. I would definitely choose MXPX over Sixpence. But I had them Sixpence coming out on top. So doing really, really good on that side of the bracket. The other side, I think Sanctus Real is going to mess me up. I think they're going to be a problem. And next week will be interesting just alone to see Switchfoot versus Me Without You. That'll be a really interesting one. That's about the only one that I think will be close. I think the rest of them are going to be, although 1,000 Foot Crutch always seems to hold out, but hopefully Reliant K blows them out of the water. So that's more about the CCM tournament. So more next week. If I am still doing a weekly show, I keep on making this hint. I'll get there in a second. Couple other things going on for me. This got cut last week from last week's show, but I did watch the 90s ska documentary. I think it's called Pick It Up or something. I don't know. Leonore from Five Iron Frenzy is one of the producers on it. It's great. I've been wanting to see it for a while. I had watched like the first hour of it at one point, but I finally got to watch it. It's great. Again, I obviously have a real strong affection for that scene, for the 90s ska. It's some of my favorite music. But, it was really enjoyable to listen to or to watch. And, for me, it just has these great moments for me. It makes me feel really great to kind of see a documentary about the scene that you really love and you think, gets a bad rap for the most part. What was I listening to a lot this week? Okay, this is where I'm going to do a little bit of news about the show, too. I was listening to a lot of hymns and a lot of Five Iron Frenzy this week because this was a really hard week. I got the worst headache I've had probably in my entire life on Sunday, and it lingered all week. And I really it's Friday, I'm recording Friday after work, and this is about the only day that I've felt human all week. It was a real rough week. I took some new responsibilities on at work, and I think I've potentially overextended myself. I cried at work multiple times this week, just gonna be real honest, that I've potentially put myself in a horrible spot because I was trying to help people out and do the right thing. We'll see. I think it'll be okay, but I'm doing stuff that I am not prepared for, so I'm digging in and trying to do that, and I just need to be able to prioritize my family and prioritize off work time. When I get off work, I may not have as much time to work on music stuff right now. I've been able to kind of do it just because work's been so great over the last 2 years that I haven't needed a whole lot of decompression time after work and a whole lot of just downtime. I've been kind of able to jump into hobbies and other things, and I think I might just need a little more not doing stuff time after work just to kind of decompress. It's going to get real busy. So with that being said, I'm just not committing to doing a weekly show at this point. I'm going to try and do it on weeks that I feel like I can fit it in and it doesn't impact my family. I think my approach for guests is going to be, if there's an album you really want to talk to me about and we want to have it on the show, I'm just going to do a mini episode. Let's talk for a couple minutes. Let's throw it out. We'll, engage about what you want to talk about, and then we can throw it out. So I'm still open to guests, but I'm gonna not make a big deal about it, and I'm not gonna try and integrate it into the show. What I really found the last 2 weeks doing the guests is it took production time from about 2 hours to about potentially 6 to 8 hours. Just the extra editing, you just got to be careful about what other people say and all those things, and not what they say, but you want to remove all the ums and ahs and all the gaps and make it sound like a good, natural conversation and all those things. So I'm going to do a guest still if people are interested, but I'm not going to do it on the main show. I'm going to just do their own thing. You tell me the couple albums you want to talk about, and then we'll break it down. We'll do it that way. So I survived the week. I hugged my kids and my wife a lot this week, and that kind of got me through. So it also means that I did not listen to a ton of extra albums. That's why I brought this all up. So I am just not committing to a weekly show anymore. If there's a week where it's just too much, I'm not going to do it. I just got to be able to let it go, which is tough for me. I don't like being a quitter, and I feel like I'm kind of quitting, but I'm not. I'm still going to try and put out as many shows as I can. It's just I can't commit to the weekly thing. I've probably talked enough about this. This is probably more of my personal life than anybody needs to know. I'm an emotional person. I kind of feed off my emotions at times. It's what I think has made me pretty good at my job at times, but at times it also is a bit of an Achilles heel. Anyway, who wants to know more about my personal life? Send me questions. Apparently, I'll just throw it all out there. Let's talk about a couple album anniversaries. The first one is Madvillainy from 2004, so a 20-year anniversary.
Living off borrowed time, the clock tick faster. That'll be the hour they knock the slick blaster. Dick Dastardly and Muttley with sick laughter. A gunfight and they come to cut the mix master. ICE Cole, nice to be old. Y2G Steve twice to threefold.
This is the only album that this duo put out, and this is two masters absolutely at their best. MF Doom is the rapper on this, and he is often referred to as your favorite rapper's rapper. And then Madlib was the guy who did all the production on this. Often this is widely considered one of the greatest hip-hop albums ever. In general, it's a masterclass, especially by MF Doom, just his work on this. I'm just going to read something from Pitchfork because I think it's a good way of kind of articulating some good things about this album. So the samples are smart and never played out, and the production and rhymes reveal a determined sense of cooperation as MF Doom spouts off his most brilliant lyrical change-ups and production-conscious playoffs. Some of my notes, this is number 146 on my favorite album list. This always feels like a new listen. I always feel like every time you listen to it, there's something new. There's something, wonderful is revealed. And yeah, the wordplay on this is wonderful. This is just great hip hop. It's got some curses, so you got to work through those. But if you're interested in what can a great hip hop album be that isn't just about club bangers, this is it. And I cannot recommend Madvillainy enough, celebrating a 20-year anniversary. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. It's MU330, self-titled, released in 1999, so celebrating a 25-year anniversary.
I'm not your favorite show anymore. It seems my ratings have dropped. Shows with singing cops, way too many commercials. Well, I put you to sleep, way too many commercials.
This was the follow-up to Crab Ragout. I said it right one of those times. I didn't. I totally messed it up. And that is one of my favorite ska albums ever. And even by 1999, when this album came out, ska is kind of out of fashion, but Dan and the crew from St. Louis are still doing their thing. Some of my notes in next year's list, this is probably outside the top 150. I don't think it was in the 150 last year, but it's being considered. My list, hopefully I'm going to get it done this year again. I want to revise it every year just for the fun of it. And my guess is I'm going to go up to 200 this year. So it probably falls somewhere in that range for me. And I love MU330. I think they are the most underrated of the 90s ska bands. This album brings some of that chaotic energy. Favorite show? I think it's their best song. It's catchy. It's just super fun. Even though Crab Ragout may be a better album, that song is, I think, their best song. And, I don't think this album was quite as personal as that one. I think that may be one of the distinctions on this album, but I love MU330. This is a great album, totally worth checking out. Ace Troubleshooter released It's Never Enough in 2004, so also celebrating a 20-year anniversary. This is the fifth and final album from the Minnesota pop punk band. I really, really love this album. It comes in at 141 on my favorite all-time album list, so 5 spots ahead of Madvillainy. And I think this is their best album. I don't think everyone would agree with me, but that's okay. I think it's just very solid pop punk, which, not for everybody. But this album is just so catchy. There's so many great songs on it. My next note is there are so many amazing songs on it. There's no bad songs. That's my opinion. There's just not really a bad song. It really, really starts and ends strong. I think the first 3 songs are fantastic. And then the wind down on the last 3 are really great, but it does not lag in the middle. I think Turnaround and My Defense are absolutely great songs, and those are smack dab in the middle. In fact, My Defense might be my favorite song off this album. So I love this album. I think this album is probably a little underrated because they put this out and then by the next year they were broken up. And so probably didn't get the life that it deserved. Some of their albums, they got toured on a lot more. And that's just the way it goes with the last album, that when a band kind of ends and it doesn't end on a huge flare. But obviously I have a strong affection for this group just because they're the Minnesota punk band, and also this album is my favorite by them. So It's Never Enough by Ace Troubleshooter. Great album. If you have not gone and checked that one out, you absolutely should. Fangs by Falling Up was released in 2009 and celebrated a 15-year anniversary. That is off Eric's list. He is the guy who runs the CCM Twitter and CCM tournament. So again, celebrating a 15-year anniversary. This is their fourth album, and their first album was released in 2004. So in 5 years, they had released 4 albums. That's pretty prolific. This album comes out on BEC, so it's on Tooth and Nail, but it's kind of on that other side of Tooth and Nail, which is always interesting to me. And this is their first album that has that science fiction concept, I believe. If I'm wrong on that, I apologize. Which, you know, I think that would kind of become a bit of a theme for the group. And again, Falling Up as a band, I am really new to. They're Eric's favorite band, so I'm very interested to dive deeper into them. I think we talked about this last week, and they're not necessarily something I'm super into, but I especially the nu metal part, I'm not a huge nu metal guy at all. But I am really interested to dive deep into these guys and kind of take them in. I really enjoyed this. What is amazing to me is that this is 5 years later than their first album, Crashings. And it's like a totally different band. If you played those 2 albums, you'd have no idea it was the same band. Yes, the vocals are similar, but it's so different. It's pretty hilarious. If you just played the music, there's no way you'd think it's the same band, which is pretty hilarious. I probably did not give this album a deep enough dive. I listened today while at work, but I really enjoyed this. I'm excited to continue to take the deeper dive into Falling Up. It's not necessarily my thing, even as they switch to the more of this indie art rock pop sound. I think that's how I would describe it. That's probably a really bad description. People are gonna tell me I'm stupid, which is fair. I'm a novice at this band, especially, but I enjoyed this. I enjoyed listening to it. Not something I'll probably go back to a ton. It'll probably be an anniversary thing that I take in the Falling Up albums. Again, just out of it's just kind of like I do for a couple other people that I really respect and really like. I want to engage in their favorite band as much as I can. So this is one that I continue to, and I've enjoyed every listen I've had of their albums, even if it's not necessarily for me. I find them interesting and engaging. So that's what matters. Last one of the kind of big anniversaries that I want to talk about is The Hazards of Love by the Decemberists, release in 2009, so also celebrating a 15-year anniversary.
Started spilling out, baby. Only then did I reckon my curse. All right, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right. First came Isaiah with his crinkled little fingers, then came Charlotte and that wretched girl Dawn.
The Hazards of Love is the 5th album by the Decemberists. I'm just going to read this because it works best to describe this album. The Hazards of Love is a rock opera with all songs contributing to a unified narrative. Similar to the use of reoccurring stories on the band's previous album, The Crane Wife, the plot is a love story. A woman named Margaret, voiced by Stark, falls in love with a shape-shifting forest dweller named William, who's voiced by Malloy. William's mother, the jealous forest queen, voiced by Nova, and the villainous Rake, also voiced by Malloy, bring conflict to the album's story arc. So there you go. That's the explanation of what this album is. I think it was a huge left turn for the group because it just was not what The Crane Wife was, which was a pretty straightforward Americana folk sounding album. This was not that at all. I think it came out to pretty mixed reviews. I think some people were really taken aback by it and really thrown off. I think some people like the ambitiousness of it. I think that's a great way to describe it. This for me, I like this more than What a Terrible World, What a Beautiful World. Again, the Decemberists are a huge band for me. I really, really enjoy them. Of all of the indie kind of hipster music, this is probably the hipster music that stuck with me the most. But I will say, even though I like it more than What a Terrible World, What a Beautiful World, I really do have to be in the mood for this one, or kind of feel like I need to do something to engage it. It's a little long. It's a little drawn out. There's a couple really great songs on here, but there's a lot of what feels like fluff in some ways. It's not fluff because it's meant to build to that story, and that's fun, but it also is not necessarily something I want to engage with on a real regular basis. Again, I like when they're more of that Americana, straightforward. Although I'm a big hypocrite because what is it? I'll Be Your Girl. I love that. That's not Americana at all. It's totally this weird album. We'll see what they bring out on their next one. The 20-minute song was an interesting song. So more about the Decemberists, I'm sure, as we go. But yeah, there you go. Hazards of Love. It's kind of a weird album. Kind of worth checking out, in my opinion. On the Cover 2 by MXPX was released in 2009, so that celebrated a big anniversary. This album could have been a lot shorter, in my opinion. There's a number of songs on here that I could do without. I definitely prefer the first one. There's a couple moments that are fun, but, you know, MXPX, I'm glad they're doing their thing. They should keep on doing that. One other big anniversary I want to mention is Out of Nowhere by Hepcat, which was released in 1994, so celebrating a 30-year anniversary. They're a ska band, and sad news, Greg Lee, one of the lead singers from the album, passed away this week, so that feels like a good one to mention. I haven't gotten to that actual release date this week, so I'll probably listen to that over the weekend. And again, there's like 7 others that celebrated big anniversaries. I'm just not going to get into them, and unfortunately, I'm not even going to mention them. I'm not going to try and do that thing. I want to try and shift and focus on next week. There's also a couple other albums that I do want to talk about. So a couple that are not celebrating large anniversaries, but are big for me, or albums that I listened to and enjoyed this week. Evildoers Beware by Mustard Plug was released in 1997. This feels like quintessential 90s ska. The Box is such a great song. And yes, I own this one on vinyl. Surfer Rosa was released in 1988 by the Pixies, and I mean, this is one of the most important, one of the best alt-rock albums ever. It's great. This is the introduction of Loud and Quiet. If you like Nirvana, you have the Pixies to thank for that. Bringing It All Back Home by Bob Dylan, released in 1965. This is about 155 on my all-time favorite albums list. Again, I'm working on expanding it out to 200. I think that's about where it's going to fall. It's just another great Dylan album. There's, you know, so many great songs on here. Mr. Tambourine Man is probably the standout, but yeah, great. Another great album by Mr. Bob Dylan. Value Pack, self-titled Value Pack. Apparently it's got another name. I've never heard of that. I love it. It's orange. This is, you know, this is pop punk in the 90s, and it's fun. I have an affection for Value Pack. I cannot explain it. 1995. Yeah, it's great. The Dingees released Armageddon Massive in 1998, and this is their debut. It's 38 minutes of great punk with some ska and reggae thrown in there. I love the Dingees. They are great. You should go listen to this album. Aaron Sprinkle's Real Life came out in 2017. It's number 137 on my favorite all-time albums list. And I found out this year that people don't like this album. Those people are wrong. It's great. Motion and Pictures by Miirror. This was released in 2003. This is, he brought it up in the concert, so I feel okay doing it because I know he has kind of an interesting relationship with 7 Day Jesus, but this is Brian McSweeney's current band. He was the lead singer of 7 Day Jesus, and this album is great. If you have not checked out Miirror, you should totally do it. I don't push into the art rock or the post rock all that much, and I think that's what I would describe this as, is kind of that post rock, art rock, maybe a little more post punk at times, but Brian McSweeney's voice soars on this album. It is beautiful. His voice is amazing. It's still one of the best voices in rock, one of the most underrated voices in rock. He should be a star. He should be an absolute megastar, and this album is great. The name of the band is Talking Heads, released in 1982. It's a live album. A couple of years later, they would actually release another live album, Stop Making Sense, which I think is just crazy that they have 2 live albums basically 2 years apart. I'm going to read this again just because it's interesting. The first LP features the original quartet in recordings from 1977 and 1979, and then the second LP features the expanded 10-piece lineup that toured in 1980 and 1981. It's really long, but it's an enjoyable listen. Another album from the Decemberists in 2005, and I still can't believe I can't say this. I messed it up last week. I'm going to mess it up now. Picaresque? I've never said that out loud. I have no idea how to say it. Picaresque. I'm an idiot. That's what that spells. It was released in 2005. The Mariner's Revenge is one of the closing. It's not the closing track, but it's the second to last track. And that is still their quintessential song. I still think that's the song that Decemberist fans think of, even if they have other songs that are their favorites. And it's such a great song. This is such a great album. Absolutely should go check it out. If you have not, The Mariner's Revenge, just for itself. I mean, it's a song about a man who gets revenge upon the person who killed his mother in the belly of a whale. How great of a song is that? And it's like 9 minutes. Perfect. All right, a little bit of a weird one here. Marbles by King Apparatus. It was released sometime in 1993. This is a ska band from the 90s. They only put out 2 albums, I believe. I want to mention this one because the song Michael and Anne is just the most catchy song you'll ever listen to. Go check that out. Michael and Anne by King Apparatus. Just fantastic. The most catchy song. I'd sing it for you, but then your podcast player would break. Bob Dylan's self-titled album was released in 1962. I just said it was his debut. Lots of classic folk songs on this, and then 2 originals. I think the song this becomes the most known for is Song to Woody. And yeah, this is a pretty fun album in a lot of ways. He gets a lot more serious a couple years later. Again, I could just go on. There's so many other albums that came out this week, and I didn't get to as many of them as I wanted to. The live album by Buck Enterprises, shout out to my Christian ska fans. Ska Lives Volume 3, released sometime in 2013. Much love to Indie Vision Music. I know going through some hard stuff, so I pray for him and his family, and I'm so thankful for that collection and the work he does. If you have never checked out Indie Vision Music, you should go check it out and all the really hard work he puts into it. Mostly talking about Christian music, but just great stuff from him. And that collection is an absolutely great collection. Pressure the Hinges by Haste the Day. That was a big one. Lots of people responding to that. Andrew Peterson, Carried Away. That's another album that got a lot of feedback on Twitter. Not something I'm super into. Drawing Back Lines by Project 86. A lot of people excited about that. And then Nickel Creek. That's another one that a lot of people were really excited about. Lullabies to Paradise by the Queens of the Stone Age. Not a lot of people are excited about that, but I love the Queens of the Stone Age for a period of time, and that's a super interesting album that I really enjoy. So that's it for the week of March 18th through the 24th. There are 4 albums next week celebrating large anniversaries. The first one is Teeth Dreams by The Hold Steady, which was released in 2014. So that's going to be a 10-year anniversary. And then the other one that I will not mention on the show for sure, though neither of the ones I'll probably talk about, is When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go by Billie Eilish, released in 2019. So that's a 5-year anniversary. Those are both interesting albums I own, but not huge things for me. I'm not going to lie. I like to Hold Steady more as a concept than I do as a musical artist, which is probably more my problem. 2 that if I end up doing a podcast next week will be definitely talked about, and 2 I'm just excited to post about. 1 is Meltdown by Steve Taylor. Now this is one I do not know an exact date. I was able to figure out from Discogs that it was sometime in March of 1984, so a 40-year anniversary. I'm excited to do that one. I think I own that on vinyl, so that's really exciting. The other one is The Crucified, and so kind of a little heavy on the old alternative CCM stuff next week if I do a show. The Crucified from 1989 is, I believe, when it was originally released, sometime during 1989. What's really funny about this one is it got re-released by Tooth and Nail, and they have their release date set as like sometime in 1994. So I think I used that date to celebrate it, but really it was originally released in 1989. Those are albums that I'm excited to post about because they're celebrating big anniversaries, and I think they're really important to a lot of people. Again, there's like another 24 albums that I would be interested in talking about on the podcast if I did. I'm not going to even mention them all. I'm going to kind of fly through them. And then there's like another 19 that I just am like, yeah, they're on my list. I probably wouldn't even talk about them. So I am going to go through a couple more of these just to kind of, wet people's whistle for next week. And, this is something I've talked about changing the show format. I think the one thing that I did decide this week, kind of in the middle of this horrible week, I thought, I just don't know if I can keep up with the podcast thing. which is fair. I think that was a good decision that I've just got to be willing to let the show go. The one thing I'm not going to let go of is the Twitter posts. I really feel like I can keep up with those if I have to cut back in other areas. And I really feel like I hope they're a blessing to others. I hope they're things that people are excited about, because I really do like posting about them. I do want to keep on doing the show. I think this is a lot of fun for me. And it forces me to kind of take notes and really evaluate music and think about it more as I'm listening, even though it's not like I'm giving you any great insight here. But I also just like thinking about the history. So I'm not giving up the Twitter posts. So all these ones that I'm not going to mention, they'll be out on Twitter. They'll be out on Instagram. They'll be there. And I'm going to continue to do that sort of thing, because I feel like that is, I get a lot more engagement on those than I do on a show. And, it's something I hope brings a little joy to people's lives in the midst of, maybe it's, tough things you're going through or happy things you're going through. So here's a couple albums that I'm excited to post about next week. Again, I already mentioned the ones that are celebrating big albums, but other ones that I'm excited to post about and engage with people on. Handed Over by Dinosaur Jr. I don't know why. Dinosaur Jr., I just love them. 1987. Small Town Poets, their self-titled, released in 1997. That one I'm sure will be a big one. I think a lot of people are going to be really excited about that post and have a lot to say. The Light of Things Hoped For by Brave Saint Saturn, released in 2003. So last year it celebrated a 20-year anniversary. One of my favorite albums. I think it's number 2 on my all-time favorite albums list. Number 2? That seems right. That's one that I know people will be excited to engage with. Usually, Brave Saint Saturn, Five Iron Frenzy stuff. Counselors of the Lonely by the Raconteurs. 2 albums by Spanish Love Songs, a band that just continues to grow on me. Giant Sings the Blues, and also Schmaltz. I think I'm saying that right. Let's see, what else is on my list here? Diaspora Problems. I did not say that right. That's the reason to listen to the show, by the way. It's just to see if I can pronounce things horribly. That's by a band called Soul Glow. It's from 2022. They're kind of this hardcore punk band out of Washington, D.C. They recently did a small desk thing at NPR, a little, what's it called? Tiny Desk show at NPR. So that's an interesting album that I might be able to talk about. The Bootleg Series by Bob Dylan, volumes 1 through 3, released in 1991. This is one of my dad. I mean, again, I've talked about how big of a Dylan fan my dad is. This is one of his favorite things that Dylan has ever put out, is these Bootleg Series, and 1 through 3 is a favorite of his, I believe. Gorillaz self-titled album. I don't have a year on that on my notes, so sorry. Live, Volume 1 by the Supertones, released in 2002. Shout out to the Christian Scoff kids. I love you. Local Honey by Brian Fallon, released in 2020. And that's also came out on the same day as Revolution Spring, released in 2020 by the Suicide Machines. 2 albums that I absolutely love came out on the same day in 2020. Winners Never Quit by Pedro the Lion in 2000. I'm sure people have a lot to say about that one. One that I know a lot of people are going to have a lot to say about on Twitter is The Everglow by May, which was released in 2005. So that's coming up on a anniversary this week. And then a couple albums by Prince, one by Sho Baraka. I like that dude. The Lawrence Arms released a greatest hits compilation and it's not really greatest hits, but it's like their best of album. I really like the Lawrence Arms. And then we're celebrating the 1-year anniversary of Against the Rest by Omnigon, which was one of my favorite albums of last year. Just 2 others that are probably not on my list, but I think people will be excited about. Oh, 3 others. Thrive by the Newsboys is going to celebrate an anniversary. I think that'll be one that people engage on. And then Andrew Peterson's Resurrection Letters from 2018. My guess is people will engage on that one. And Sufjan Stevens' Carrie and Lowell, I think that's how you say that. And that one from 2015, that one is also one I'm expecting people to engage upon. I think that's an album that really hit a lot of people. I think I got that I own that album, but I think I added it from Eric's favorite albums list. So I think a lot of people will be interested in talking about that. I could be totally wrong about that, but I think that's a big one for people. That's it for the show. A little shorter this week. Hopefully that's better. Less of me talking and more just talking about music. Although I feel like I talked about my personal life quite a bit on this, so apologies for that. I will try not to talk about my personal life as much on the show. Again, I'm hoping to keep the show up as much as I can, but If it doesn't happen weekly, it doesn't happen weekly. That's just where we're going to go. And if there's albums you want to talk about, let's try and find a time. Let's try and do just kind of a quick mini connect. I wrote a script for what it would look like if somebody wanted to come on and just talk about one album. So I can send it to you. We can fill it in, and we can do it real quick. I'd love to have you on the show. I got to make it work. I got to prioritize my family. And so I'm not going to bend over backwards to make it work. Sorry. Hope nobody's offended by that, but I want to try and make things work if we can. So yeah, that's it for this show. The music that you hear at the beginning and the end of the show is the instrumental version of Sing It Out at Street Level by Peg and the Rejected, which is the Dingies, who I talked about earlier, just focusing on ska tunes. It's great. You should go check it out. It's on Bandcamp. It's free. Thanks so much for joining me this week. Let me know what you think. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? What are your favorites from the week? You can find me on Twitter at Caleb the Spy with no spaces. I'm also on Instagram, Caleb the Spy with underscores in between those words. And you can email me, calebthespypodcast@gmail.com. I think I check it fairly regularly, even though nobody emails me. Sad. No spaces or underscores in that. If there are albums that should be added to my calendar, please let me know. If they're worth celebrating, I do want to try and put them on my calendar. I probably have missed some here and there, but overall, I try and add them and try and make time to get those posted so people can engage about them. Please subscribe and share the podcast if you're so inclined. Leave a rating or a review. I have heard it's one of the most effective ways to spread the word about podcasts. I'm also on YouTube. I'm doing trying to do some shorts, although I failed this week. Again, life got busy and everything got cut from my life that wasn't about getting through the week. Most of all, I do want to say thanks so much if you engage with me on social media. I really do appreciate it. I put a lot of time and energy into those posts. It's one of the things I want to keep up. I hope people enjoy them. So yeah, thanks for engaging with me. Hey, look, I still got to like the 40-minute mark. I'm a loser, big time. Talk to you soon. Bob Dylan's Syph. 3, 2, 1.